Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the Kincardine Mearns Area Committee on the 24th of March 2026. Welcome to those attending in the gallery as well and online. Good to see you all. So please note that the public section of the meeting will be recorded and available to view online after the meeting is finished. And as usual, can I ask members to activate their cameras where possible, and can all attendees mute their microphones when not speaking? And please do not come in during items unless I invite you to do so. If members wish to speak on any point, please use the hands up function in Teams. And as usual, we'll take an appropriate comfort break at some point, but if you like one sooner, please just let me know. So we'll begin with the settlement. Can I ask Gemma to take it by roll call?
Yeah, careful that on you. Present. Councillor Aitchison.
Present.
Councillor Black.
Present.
Councillor Burnett.
Present.
Councillor Carney. Here. Councillor Carr.
Morning.
Councillor Dickinson. Present. Councillor Edson.
Present.
Councillor Smith.
Present.
Councillor Sullivan.
Here.
Councillor Turner.
Yep.
And Councillor Victor.
Could we just check the sound level, because I think it's quite low coming in from the line. For those of us in the room, we can hear you, but
The sound isn't very good, Sarah. We can hear you, but not through a microphone. It's like an echo.
okay. I can pass any better?
Not much different.
No.
Right, do we have any explanation for why sound will be difficult being online? We'll make a point to really try and lift our voices. I'll remind everybody, if you feel it's dropping, please let me know if you're really struggling to hear. We're not quite sure why that, the sound will be an issue this morning.
I've simply moved the microphone as near to people as possible, so hopefully that helps a bit.
Your patience, everybody. We'll move on to item 1, which is a declaration of members' interest. Can I ask if anybody has either a transparency statement or a declaration of interest that they wish to make? I'm seeing a hand from, I'll take Councillor Everson, then I'll come to you, Councillor Fanny.
Yeah, Chair, I'd like to make a transparency statement when we get to the private item, if it's all right to wait till then, please.
Yes, okay.
Thank you.
And Councillor Carney, Laurie.
Yeah, so
Yes, you do.
So I'd like to make a transparency statement regarding item item 5. So I do know the applicant. There's a neighbouring farmer, and I've taken the objective test and I'll send you to.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you. I'm seeing no further hands, so we'll move on to the resolution on equalities, item 2A. And can I ask the committee if, in line with the Council's legal duty under section 149 of the Equality Act 2010, we are agreed that in making decisions, we shall have due regard to the need to eliminate discrimination, harassment and victimisation, that we will advance equality of opportunity between those who share a protected characteristic and persons who do not share it, and seek to foster good relations between those who share a protected characteristic and persons who do not share it, and that where an integrated impact assessment has been provided, we will consider its contents and take these into account when reaching a decision. Can I ask if we are agreed?
Agreed.
Thank you very much. So item 2B relates to an exempt item on our agenda this morning. It's item 8. Can I ask if I have agreement to take this in private?
Agreed.
Thank you very much. So moving on to the minute of the meeting of the Kincardine and Mearns Area Committee of the 3rd of March 2026. Can I ask whether or not the committee has agreed that this is a correct record of the meeting? And if anybody has any issues of accuracy that they wish to raise, please do so by raising your hand now. I'm seeing no hands, so we are agreeing that it is an accurate minute of the meeting. So moving swiftly on, we come to item 4, which is the Scottish Fire and Rescue Service Performance Report for Q3 of 25-26. We have Ewan Cargill, the station commander, with us this morning to introduce the report. Welcome, Ewan. I'll pass to you to speak to the report. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, everyone. I hope you can hear me all okay. And I hope you can all see a copy of my report that I sent in previously. I'll just start with the summary, if I may. So for the quarter, so we got Q3, 2025 to 2026, we had a total of 67 incidents, of which 20 of these were fires, 23 were non-fire incidents, 19 were false alarms, and 8 of which were unwanted fire alarm signals, UFAS incidents. Excuse me. Of these incidents, we had 7 people rescued by firefighters, 7 people received first aid or hospital treatment. There was 1 non-fire fatality, and crews in the areas carried out 19 home fire safety visits, and there were 4 fire safety audits completed. So of the top 10 incident types, outdoor fires were the most common with 10. Building fires were next with 9, along with interagency requests at 9. UFAS at 8. All the statistics then are expected for that time of year, and there are no unusual spikes or dips that we can see. I'll move on to trends then. I won't go into details for each one. However, again, we've not identified any unusual trends for that time of year or for the quarter. I would note that the unwanted fire alarm signal trend, it has been a gradual decrease, and that's been due to a change in the way that we record our UFAS incidents, but you can see that on the graph there. Again, number 2 then, more of the trends, accidental dwelling fire casualties, again, that's remained at 0 for the last while, which is good to see. And again, there are no unusual trends, spikes or dips that we can see again. Much like the UFAS as well, I'll add our home fire safety visits. They are slightly lower than have been previously. And again, that's due to a change in how we record and how we, or when we actually attend someone's house to carry out a home fire safety visit also. So if we look at number 3, accidental dwelling fires, then there was a total of 5 in this period, of which 3 of them were started via a cooking appliance, and 2 of them were started via heating equipment. It's an increase by 1 from the same quarter from the previous year. If we look at accidental dwelling fire casualties, then pleased to see that it's 0, and it's remained 0 for quite some time. If we go to non-fire casualties, that's number 5. So there's a total of 7 non-fatal casualties, 1 fatal casualty, and 7 people were rescued by firefighters. That's for non-fire casualties. 5 people were taken to hospital with slight injuries, and 2 people had serious injuries and were taken to hospital. So my notes there say it's similar as per previous year, with a decrease in non-fatal casualties from 12 down to 7, and a decrease for serious injuries, and that's gone from 6 for the same quarter previous year down to 2 for this quarter. Number 6, and deliberate fires. So there was a total of 7 for this quarter, of which 3 of them were within grassland, woodland and crops. 2 of them were deliberate refuse fires. 1 was a deliberate dwelling fire, and 1 was an outdoor fire that we haven't specifically classified. And that's an increase from 3 up to 7 for this quarter, and that's compared to the same quarter last year. So non-domestic fires, number 7, there was a total of 2. They've both gone down as accidental, and same as previous year. 1 was limited to the room where it started, and 1 we don't have any further details about. So UFAS then, number 8. Again, if you see the graph there, it is a downward trend, as I mentioned previously. Of these unwanted fire alarm signals, then 3 of them were for residential homes, 2 were hotels, 2 were other residential homes, and 1 was from industrial manufacturing. And that's an increase from 4 from the previous year, the same quarter. I would note that residential homes has also gone up from 0 to 3 calls since the same quarter last year. We'll move on to number 9, road traffic collisions then. So there's a total of 7 road traffic collisions in this quarter, 5 of which involving cars, 2 were involving lorries or HGVs. Excuse me. There were 5 non-fatal casualties. 5 people were rescued by firefighters from the RTC, 3 of which were taken to hospital with slight injuries and 2 of which were taken to hospital with serious injuries. I would like to note that it's a reduction from 15 down to 7 from the same quarter in the previous year. And RTCs involving cars in particular down from 14 to 5. And there is a slight increase with the RTCs involving lorries. It was 1 for the same quarter previous year. For this quarter, it was up to 2. Number 10 then, home fire safety visits. So there was 19 in total. We don't have any further information about them. Number 11, fire safety enforcement carried out 4 audits. And again, I don't have any further information there. I have put in my notes, there was a reduction from 39 down to 19 home fire safety visits. As I mentioned previously, we have a new home fire safety visit app, and there's a new way of recording and for people who are eligible for a home fire safety visit. So that's why the figures are come down slightly. Hopefully they will be back up by the end of this year. And finally then, number 12, community safety and engagement. Crews all continue to deliver our road safety presentation to schools and local businesses. For the quarter, crews conducted bonfire night safety presentations to local schools, and they also attended numerous community engagements involving Christmas light switch-ons and Santa parades. And that's really everything from me.
Thank you very much, Ewan, for the introduction to the report. So before I proceed to take any comments or questions, just to remind us that the recommendation before us will be to acknowledge and discuss the attached performance report for this third quarter of the year, and to acknowledge and discuss any local operational matters arising together with key resource issues based on the report in Appendix 1. So I have 2 hands at the moment. Councillor Carr, George.
Pleasure, and thank you for a very comprehensive presentation and some fairly encouraging trends there. I was just going to make a comment really about the community safety and engagement side of it, which I think is a very important part of the work, and it's always good to see the teams coming out for some of the local galas and so on, and for engaging with the kids at an early stage, because I noticed with some of the statistics, you know, the deliberate fires, that's a bit worrying. So anything we can use to sort of raise awareness and the implications of some of these is probably good. The other point I was going to raise was in relation to just the overall strategy of the fire and rescue service in relation to the stations that we have. We certainly saw some proposed closures in Scotland. Our community councils are always quite proactive in responding to these questionnaires about, you know, it's just the necessity to have local teams in the local areas. So it's just a wee word from you as to whether we can look forward to a sustainable fire and rescue service based on the current model, or do you think we're going to see further cutbacks coming down the line? Because we've certainly got Mearns, we've got Inverbervie and Scott. Thank you.
You just come in, Ewan.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Councillor. I would say currently we're looking at our service delivery review. It's been in the media quite for a bit. It's on hold, I believe, until the middle of this year. Now, the stations that were up for closure were well publicised. There's still decisions to be made on that. I don't know myself. However, our senior leadership team are currently looking at that along with the Fire Service Board as well. And I believe a decision will be made for the middle of this year. I would say, however, that we are still quite underfunded within the fire service, and we are looking to make some major financial savings. I believe there still may be further closures in the future. I don't know where they will be. Again, that will be open to review. We need to go to public consultation and things like that. But I would like to say for our area, so Inverbervie, Lawrencekirk, I would say these fire stations are relatively safe due to their locations. It's quite a strategic location we've got, and the amount of calls they do attend when available. I hope that answers your question, Councillor.
Yes, thank you, very much so, and that's good to know a wee bit of reassurance there, and just to sort of highlight that the community very much value these local services, and the other key thing is making sure that we've got them well staffed. But from what I can gather, they're relatively okay at the moment. So let's work to come to that would be me happy. Thank you.
If I can just jump in again, if I may, Councillor. I would say that both Lawrencekirk and Inverbervie are well staffed. I believe Lawrencekirk sitting with 10, which is maximum really for that station, and Inverbervie will be soon at 11 staff because we've got a couple of new recruits in the pipeline.
Thank you for that response. And it is noticeable, if I could just come in here, that there's no update on staff complements across the area, in which we normally have. So I don't know if that was deliberate or a change in the way you're going to be reporting. Sorry, Alan, I will bring you in.
Apologies, Councillor, if I may just add to there, that was my fault. I didn't put in the staffing levels on the stations. They are quite fluid at the moment. As I said, within Inverbervie, we've got a couple of new recruits on. We've had some people leaving and more people joining, but I will get that added to the next report, if I may. Apologies for that.
Oh, thank you, Councillor Turner. Alan.
Okay, yeah, I'll just add to stuff. I did note he recently managed to get back up to full complement in Stonehaven. I think he managed to get a couple of officers recruited there. I'll leave it at that on that part. Yeah, the trends, I think, as Councillor Carr said, are all looking good. Definitely downwards in terms of actual incidents and everything. But a couple of things I was just curious of. When I looked at the unwanted fire alarm signals in particular, because I remember from previous reports that was, false alarms, it takes time to call out. That's, again, it's great, it's trending down, it's consistent. But when I also look at the home safety, fire safety visits, I also noticed I compare it now to a few years ago, they are significantly down. I know you said during the briefing there that you don't have further details as to why. I mean, the first thing I looked at was why is North Kincardine has so many more visits than the other parts of Kincardine and Mearns, just out of curiosity, if nothing else. But is it because of your other ways of engaging with the public? I mean, I think in terms of Brew with the Crew, where you run that events every so often at the fire stations, because that's part of my question was, is there going to be more of the Brew with the Crew type events and publicised out for the public in the coming months, etc., so they can actually learn more about fire safety? The other question I had was in relation to the actual types of fires that are occurring. You mentioned refuse fires. Is that people burning rubbish? Or is it basically vapes, basically catching fire, for want of an alternative thing? It's something that's recyclable, lithium, or is it's just that? And as we're moving into summer, in terms of wildfire provision, is that something that we're concerned about in terms of the fire service there? It could be more wildfires.
Right,
We just-
councillor. Oh, if I can jump in, if I may, councillor. So there's quite a few points there. I'll try and address them as best I can. So first of all, the home fire safety visits. I've mentioned previously that we have a new app that we record them in on our online systems. So there's been a slight change in which visits we actually attend. When somebody would request a home fire safety visit, they would have to answer some questions which would allow us to build what we call a risk rating. So you'd be scored low, medium or high. So beforehand, we would attend everybody's property, everyone's house, even if they scored low, and we would go in and see if they needed any detection. We were finding that often people scoring low and medium weren't needing any detection or anything like that. And I'm not going to say it was a wasted visit, but we could have spent more time doing other things as opposed to just going to people's houses with the full crew, with the fire engines. So what we do now is when someone phones up and they answer the questions, if they score low or medium, then they get telephone advice. So they're given advice via the telephone, via the phone call at the time. If they score high, then that's when the crews can go and visit a property. But there is another bit to that as well. We have what we call our community action teams, which work in Aberdeenshire in the area. Now, if someone scores high, the visit will often get passed directly to the community action team, because that might mean there's some difficulties with the visit. It might be a bit more complicated than what the crews and the stations are used to dealing with. Now, the community action team are used to working with vulnerable people in the communities. They're often especially adapted and suited to do these visits. So that's really why the visits that crews are attending have dropped, I would say significantly, because there has been quite a significant drop. I hope answers that first part about the home fire safety visits. The other question about community engagement. So yes, absolutely, the brew with the crew and also our breakfast clubs that the crews run in the holidays for the local schools and school children, things like that. They are definitely going ahead this year. The crews will be preparing for them at the moment, certainly for the Easter holidays, and also looking towards for the summer holidays as well. So they will be happening in the area. Your third point about the burning rubbish, so the refuse fires. So yes, that can be people either burning rubbish or say someone's wheelie bin being deliberately set on fire. That would go down as a rubbish fire. And the last one, wildfires. So yes, we currently have a new policy about wildfires in the whole of Scotland. We have, I believe it's 8 new wildfire units. So that is a new vehicle with a new trailer that we have, and they have a new all-wheel drive vehicle on the trailer that has its own pump and its own water supply, and that can get to the really difficult areas up on the hills and then really inaccessible areas where we often find wildfires starting. And hopefully that will make a big difference then. I hope that answers everything, Councillor.
Yeah, it does. I'm just curious, what, Easter holidays or Easter vacation basically is next week. So I'm just wondering if are you putting out some sort of publicity on the fact that you'll be running that, just so the public know, and which stations, etc. That's the breakfast clubs or the brew with the crew, and just. Yeah, I welcome new equipment and for wildfires, etc. But I'm just curious, is there any of them within what is the Aberdeenshire area being located here?
Just to answer your last question there, Councillor, then yes, I believe we've got 3 of them in our Aberdeenshire area. And the other question about the holidays and the breakfast clubs and brew with the crew, I'll need to speak to the station staff about that and the watch commanders and see exactly what advertising they're doing, but I will follow that up, Councillor.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. So just a couple of points from me. And just picking up on that very last one relating to the promotion of things like brew with the crew and the breakfast clubs. I mean, obviously, councillors are very happy to help amplify a message. So it is good if we know about the dates and such things that, it's possible to send us an email or however you would prefer to do it. That is useful. And I'm sure many of us would do our best to support that message going out. I had a question arising again relating to home visits. You've spoken quite a bit about this now and referred to the app. Now, when I heard the word app, I instantly assumed that's something I'm going to have to use as a member of the public, that it's something that's going to go to my phone in some way and I'm going to do something off the app. But from what I'm understanding from what you're saying, the app sits within your own processes rather than being something that a member of the public has to work through. It's an application to do a survey with anybody asking for one of these. Is that correct? I mean, you said that you will ask questions to prioritise. One understands that, and telephone calls or a visit depending. Is that what you're calling the app? That process?
Apologies, Councillor, I wasn't clear on that. So the application it's purely internal fire service application. It's a brand new program that we've developed ourselves. So with regards to people requesting home fire safety visits, it's on the website. There's telephone numbers there, so it's exactly the same way as it's done before. It's just all our own internal recording is different now, thanks to that new app.
Thank you very much, just for that clarity, because apps always create a concern around access for people. So that's reassuring. My only other question was going to be regarding, it's really good to hear you talk about the drop off in road traffic collisions and all of that. Those numbers were really significant that you quoted between this year and last year. I just wondered, do you have information about what the causes of those accidents were? Were they weather related? Were they just driver error? I mean, driver error can be occurring when it's weather related, obviously, but do you also track cause?
Good question, Councillor. Thank you. So that really doesn't come down to our remit, Councillor. That would really be the police that would be responsible for deciding the cause of an accident. I would say that when we attend an incident, it's often very obvious what the cause is, but we cannot say for certain what that is, and that's really a remit for the police that would do that, I'm afraid.
No, that's helpful. Thank you very much. I'm not seeing any further hands. Are there any further questions arising for Mr. Cargo? In which case, I'll just take us back to our recommendations, which were to acknowledge and discuss the attached performance report, which we have done, and to acknowledge and discuss any local operational matters arising from it. So those recommendations have been discharged, and it's just for me to thank you very much for attending this morning. Ewan, we do appreciate the time that you're giving to be here and your input and answer to our questions. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Chair, and thank you, everyone. Nice to see you all again.
Have a good day.
Bye-bye, and you.
So we'll now move on to item 5, which is the full planning permission for the erection of deer fencing and gates. This is the retrospective application. Change of use of woodland to dog park at land at Kilnhill, Lawrence Kirk. Before I pass over to Gregor, we do have requests to speak this morning. We have a request from the applicant, Gail White, and a request from the objector, Mr. Graham Bruce. I ask if you're agreed to hear from the parties. Yes, and saying nodding heads online as well. So thank you. So just to say to Ms. White and Mr. Bruce, that when the time comes, I'll explain, what's happening. Okay, but for the moment, I'm going to ask the planner, Mr. Spence, to introduce this report. We'll have an opportunity to ask Mr. Spence questions. When we've asked all the questions we have for the moment, I will then come to you, Ms. White, and we'll hear from yourself. And after that, we'll ask you questions, and then it'll be your turn, Mr. Bruce. And there'll be an opportunity for us to ask further questions after that, again, of Mr. Spence, or at any point throughout, actually. So I'll hand over to you, Gregor, to introduce the report. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, the application, my application today, the proposal, as mentioned, is for the retrospective erection of deer fencing, a change of use of land, approximately 1.2 hectares of existing woodlands to what is a commercial dog exercise park. As we move through the slides, you'll see the site and the fact that the fencing has been erected, etc. An applicant has advised us in the supporting information that the the use has taken place in a test setting where a number of people have been invited to utilise the site for the purpose, and that has helped them inform the operational activities of the site, etc. So it is retrospective. So looking at the slides, this is the site plan, and as always with the site plan, the site area is indicated by the red site line. This is an existing access that leads off the public road that heads to the south east towards Lawrencekirk. The site is located about 1.2 kilometres just west of Lawrencekirk, and in the vicinity of Overton. This is an existing access that serves 3 properties, and which we can see here, the access has been continued towards the site area into the woodland. A car parking area has been created. This is fenced in, gates either side of the car park, and then there's deer fencing that surrounds the site area, and there's a further entrance to the north of the site. This identifies an equipment access gate, not as a primary access to the site. We do have some sections of the fence that's been erected here, and I'll show you photographs in a moment so you can see it in situ, and sometimes plans don't quite show what demonstrate quite best what it looks like on the site. Deer fencing, approximately 2 metres high, and the gates, as we'll see the infrastructure at the car park and also at the northwestern corner of the site. So here's the photographs, and you can see that fencing in the foreground here. This is a view taken along the western edge of the site, back towards the public road to the north, and this is the site boundary. This photograph is taken standing in the adjacent field. And this is looking along the northern boundary of the public road, and again, you can see that deer fencing. And if I move to the right just slightly, there's the access gate to the northwest corner of the site. Just an equipment access gate, not a public access gate to the facility. You can also see from the slides the general characterisation of the site as woodland, mature trees, woodland setting. And we do have some views from around the site of just the proximity of neighbouring dwelling houses, as this forms the crux of the discussion and the recommendation from the planning service we'll move on to in a moment. But this is looking from the field, looking towards one of the houses located to the south, and this is a view from within the site, looking towards property adjacent to the site area. Again, site boundaries indicated by the deer fencing. Looking at the report, members will note that ultimately the reason the application being referred to the committee is following consultation with local members. Members have sort of discussed the application in relation to noise impacts and amenity impacts, and also the planning policy implications. I've given a general overview of what the proposal is. It's fairly straightforward. There's a change of use of the land to a commercial dog exercise facility. Essentially, looking through the report, section 3 of the report relates to representations, and there are a number of representations both in support and objection in relation to the proposal. Proposed support, which include a petition of over 60 site signatories, highlight the public benefits and benefit of the facility to those in the area that can utilise it, and objections primarily raise issues of amenity impacts, with primary concern being noise. And that brings us on to a consultation responses from relevant consultees in section 4 of the report. It's noted that environmental health do object to the proposal on the grounds of noise, and that is ultimately what's fleshed out in the discussion in section 6. But whilst the principle of development is supported, as it is a use that is appropriate for a countryside location and it's reasonably well located to existing settlements, only being just over a kilometre away from Lawrencekirk. The issue here is the proximity of the neighbouring dwelling houses and the impacts that the facility could have in terms of the amenity, dogs utilising the site, and a lack of control from the planning service over noise issues that could occur. It's arguable that not every dog will make noise. My own dog is quite quiet, other people's dogs are quite noisy. We can't control that aspect, and that is the crux of what environmental health are saying here. It is ultimately there's no way to assess the noise implications. This is not a piece of machinery that has a tone or a sound that we can measure, because it's erratic and unpredictable. And ultimately that leads us to the position where on balance we have to recommend refusal of the application because of the potential amenity impacts on the closest neighbouring dwelling houses. That's what's reflected in the discussion, and also the recommendation section 10 of the report. I'm happy to answer any queries best I can, and also the assistance of Mark Nichol from Environmental Health, who can perhaps provide a bit more context from an environmental health perspective, and maybe give a bit of background on noise complaints related to dog barking. But I'm happy to answer any queries. That's the expansion. Thank you.
Thank you very much for the introduction to the application. Gregor. So questions for Mr. Spence, and as he's indicated, we have Mark Nicol with us. Welcome, Mark, who can address perhaps if there are any more detailed noise-related questions. So, Councillor Everson, Alison.
Yeah, thank you. I'd referred it because I thought it was useful to have that public discussion, open discussion about the noise. And so it would be useful to hear any further details about the assessment that can be carried out, the limitations of the assessment and the conclusions reached as a result of that. So I think that's Mark Nicol, I think, might be able to give us a bit more detail on that. Thank you.
I'll just speak to Mark Gregor, if that's okay. Mark, if you'd like to come in and address the questions and request from Councillor Everson, that would be welcome. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Councillor Everson. Thank you, Chair. Well, essentially, unfortunately, there is no recognised standard or methodology for assessing noise from dog parks. Also, a noise impact assessment is not considered suitable for assessing noise from dog parks due to the variables that exist. These include the type and level of barking, moving noise sources, and varying distance to receptors, and is also associated random noise from patron voices and whistles. The noise sources are considered unpredictable, resulting in high levels of uncertainty. Additionally, the character of the noise from barking dogs and its impact is extremely difficult to quantify with any certainty, and it is the character of the noise that typically grabs attention and leads to annoyance and ultimately complaints. We are of the opinion that any noise impact assessment would not be wholly reliable. It would risk rejection and would involve unnecessary cost for the applicant and would also be open to challenge. So essentially, in lieu of a noise impact assessment, the service has taken a risk-based approach, and this has been applied to assess the proposal, and it's considering things mentioned previously by Gregor in terms of the nature of the area, existing amenity, likely background noise levels, which are typically going to be low in this type of area, distance to receptors, type and number of receptors, and boundary sharing. Ultimately, this proposal is considered to present a higher risk of adverse impact on amenity with likelihood of complaint. Going back to the noise impact assessment aspect, noise impact assessments there is a BS standard 4142 for the assessment of commercial and industrial noise. Within the scope of that document, it specifically excludes noise from domestic animals, and so that can't be applied as either. So that's just really building on what Gregor has already outlined and what my colleague Catherine Clark has detailed within her previous responses, and I hope that helps clarify our position.
Very much, Mark. Councillor Everson, just to check, did you want to?
That was very helpful to hear that in this forum. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. So turning to Councillor Carter George.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, again, probably not maybe a question from Gregor. We don't have any detail on the opening hours. That's maybe something we can ask the applicant if that's something that's not in the paper. Secondly, question would be what sort of enforcement powers things will have in relation to this application. Thanks.
Gregor, do you want to comment on both, or will I bring Mark in for the enforcement powers?
Well, enforcement powers is a difficult one because this is a planning application. And essentially, if we grant planning consent, any enforcement would follow the planning service to enforce that consent. And that's the crux of this here. Is there a way that we can control the activities on this site through planning condition, essentially the question that around where we'll always arrive at. And the difficulty here is for a planning condition to be successful has to meet 6 tests. And one of those tests is enforceability. And the problem we have is how we reasonably be able to enforce conditions that try to control the noise a dog makes, which is unpredictable. So we could look at other aspects like opening hours. We could control the opening hours to the facility. But within those hours, it's very difficult to control what happens. In terms of number of dogs, it's not reasonable to control that. We can't be standing there at all times ensuring that that's what's taking place on the site. We just don't have the resources. And just don't enter into those types of conditions when they know they will fail and cause issue. So that leaves us a very limited set of resources to control what happens on the site if we were to grant planning consent. In terms of planning enforcement, well, once you grant consent, as long as the site is being operated in compliance with the consent and the use that's granted, then there's no enforcement of noise within that because there's no control over the noise. And likewise, Mark can perhaps comment on this directly if he wishes, but once we grant planning consent, it becomes much more difficult for the Department of Health to seek to address any noise concerns from this type of use, because there's a consented use on the site. You have to demonstrate, I'm speaking of term, perhaps I shouldn't leave for Mark, but essentially you'd be looking at nuisance levels. Again, there's quite a high bar for nuisance, where somebody's amenity could be severely impacted until you get to that point as well. So we have to keep that in mind. A nuisance isn't the bar, it's amenity, and the amenity impact of what somebody can reasonably expect to enjoy in their dwelling house, in their garden, in a rural location. And that's where this one unfortunately falls foul, a non-balanced decision. We just can't come up with the tools to control what happens on the site once we grant consent. Ultimately, our aim is always to grant planning consent where possible, but only the right locations for the right use. So that's the issue here. Given the proximity of the dwelling houses, it's just the wrong location.
Can I just check, Mark, do you want to make any contribution in response to Councillor Carr as well?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Thank you, Councillor. Yeah, I think Gregor has summed that up quite nicely. The statutory nuisance provisions that environmental health enforce relate to the top end of adverse impact on amenity. So whilst there are these provisions that we can enforce for abatement, and that is reducing to a more acceptable level, these provisions relate to sort of more extreme adverse impacts on amenity, and they don't deal with the impact on amenity that is the test in this circumstance, if that helps.
Thank you very much. Councillor Carr, do you have one follow-up?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I suppose the balance here is because we're discussing dogs essentially, but you're talking about dogs and people make quite a lot of noise as well. And it's probably people would be my greatest concern about this. So I might just leave it at that and I'll ask further questions for that.
Thank you. Thank you. So moving on to Councillor Carney.
I'm not sure if this is really a question for the applicant or Gregor, but I'll ask it anyway. You know, this is, you're talking about dog noise, and I've been a great user of dog parks. That, you know, I've got many rescue dogs that are quite reactive, and I'm just wondering how many complaints have there been from other dogs that, you know, I mean, some of the dog parks I've used have been, you know, there's been residential properties quite close by. Have you, I mean, is this a big concern, you know, for complaints from environmental health? Maybe it's for the environmental officer just to ask. Thank you.
Yeah, that was my suggestion, Chair.
Mark, I'll bring you in to address that question, please, about the level of occurrence or whether this is a frequent issue.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Councillor Carney. I don't have the statistics at hand. I can advise that in assessing this and other applications of this nature, my colleague Catherine Clark had visited a number of dog parks and was aware, you know, of the noise emissions from them, and that has formed or helped form our approach with these type of applications. So apologies, I don't have the statistics to hand, but typically when we're chatting about dog barking complaints, they are generally from the closest neighbouring properties to, in terms of domestic dog barking complaints that we receive, they're generally from the immediate neighbouring properties, which is the type of situation we've got here in terms of the proximity of the residential properties, if that helps.
Councillor Carney, did you want to come back?
Yes, please. Yeah, so, yeah, that's quite helpful, but also, you know, we're, from what I read in the report, there are going to be a limit on the dog, so it's not such a public park where, you know, everybody can take their dog. I mean, it does seem to be that there's going to be some sort of booking facilities, so it's not going to be 20 dogs. You know, there might only be one.
So can I check, Councillor Carney, you asking a question or making a comment to that?
Probably a comment.
Thank you. We'll leave it there then. Gregory, would you like to come in and comment on the?
Yeah, it's a good point you make that. I think has advised as part of their management plan, they would limit the amount of dogs in sports mentioned in the report. I would just clarify that that would be the responsibility of the applicant, because as I mentioned, planning service would be able to condition that. So there would be no control over that. There would be a trust element that the management of the facility would take place, and that is what would be, well, that's what would occur. But there would be no comeback or control on that. It's just to clarify that.
Okay, well, thank you. That's helpful. So Councillor Agnew, Wendy,
Yes,
could I ask you to pop your microphone on? Wendy,
Oh, yeah.
please? Thank you.
yeah, I've had dogs all my life, from terriers to German shepherds, collies, to every type of dog. And of course, Pinnacle was a pack of foxhounds, 60 of them. Now, dogs react to certain things. I can't see a dog going into a dog park with the owner starting back. I can understand a dog going into a dog park, barking, here's another dog park. That's what dogs do. Whether
Councillor, can I ask, or can I just stop?
I'm going to ask,
That's right.
and the other thing I've got here is hazardous people policy, hazardous and potentially polluting developments and contaminated land. Would you explain that? Because I believe the dog, you know, food, environmental friendly things. I just didn't understand that one.
I can, so essentially that is a broad brush policy that looks at developments that may have an impact on amenity essentially. And also it focuses on hazardous developments and contaminated land. It also talks about any development that may have an impact or a greater impact on amenity of nearby residents or land uses. So essentially that's how it links in. It is tenuous to some extent.
Yeah.
Essentially it applies to the amenity impacts of the development and this impact upon the neighbouring properties. Look at the policy more specifically in the wording you've got to do so. I'll just pull it up, I'm afraid. Essentially that's where that fits in. You're right, the title of the policy isn't the neatest in that regard because it has a heavy influence on specific aspects, but it is a broad brush policy in terms of hazardous, what we consider bad neighbour development or hazardous development.
So if it's tenuous, can we scrap that then? Why is it in there? It seems a bit unfair.
So yeah, well, no, sorry.
You're at microphone.
When I say
Right.
tenuous, I mean in terms of the title of the policy, it's not particularly. But essentially, the intent of the policy is to protect amenity from hazardous developments. That is essentially what the policy is. So in that regard, it's not tenuous. It's very directed, and that is the area here. Is that ultimately what we're suggesting is to grant this facility could have a significant impact on the amenity of neighbours. And that's where the hazardous use element comes into it.
So you would agree that
Microphone, please. Sorry.
you would agree that the applicant has done all that he or she can to mitigate any hazardous or issues using correct dog food. You know, I would think, would that be correct?
Yeah.
Doing our best, in other words.
Your microphone again. Thank you.
Yeah, there's a management plan for how the facilities used and how dog food is disposed of, etc. And the flag service, so we haven't raised any concern specifically about the use of the facility and harmful impacts in that regard. The harmful impacts here are amenity impacts that are arising. So it's not in terms of contaminated land or waste, essentially, that we're saying that the impact is too great. It's not amenity resulting from the noise. That's the issue here.
Yeah, so the other thing I was thinking of is mitigation.
Microphones, please. It's the party for the benefit of those in mind. Thank you.
In mitigation, would it help if the applicant plant off somehow with some type of canvas or something, so the dog in these homes wouldn't see it? Would that be in mitigation to the, because dogs don't bark usually. The first thing a dog will go into that wood is look at sliding trees and sit about, to me, no, you don't. But if it hears a dog barking, yes, it will react sometimes, especially the smaller dogs. And I just wonder if there's any mitigation you could advise that.
So I've got Mr. Stephen who wishes to come in.
Thank you, Chair. If I can just take this moment, and I'm sure Gregor will come in after me as well, to highlight that it's not the role of the committee to try and find a way to make this application go through, but it's not this committee's role to try and identify ways. It is your role to look at the applications submitted and make a judgment on that. So if I could just pre-warn Gregor and wish to make a comment on that effect, but just to stop some of those questions coming in at this stage, there may be things you wish to ask the applicant, the objector when they come in, but it's possibly not relevant at this stage. Gregor, is there anything you'd like to add, if you don't mind, Jenny?
Can I add something then? It's not a deer fence. A deer fence is 8 feet high. This is only 2 meters. That's a difference.
Thanks for keeping it right, Councillor Agnew. Yeah, so it takes the form of the effects, the descriptive. It's just really a bit of aesthetics of the fence. You're right, you can jump that. I've seen it happen. So that essentially, thanks, Mr. Stephen, the comment is entirely correct. The committee does have to assess applications in front of them, but obviously as part of the planning services role, if there was a simple solution here, that we would seek to find that. The difficulty is I can't get into the mind of a dog or individual dogs and how they react and what makes them react. And it's difficult to account for every circumstance. And I think that's ultimately what your line of questioning gets into. Is specific dogs will react to other dogs. Specific dogs will react to excitement. Specific dogs will react to their owner. There's the car race, another valid point. It's not just dogs, it's how owners react when they get into an open space with their dogs and call on their dogs and play with their dogs. And ultimately that is the issue here. It's the introduction of the use and the change in characterisation for the neighbouring properties that can't be overcome here, because we feel that it has the potential to be at a level that would be adverse in terms of their amenity. And there is no mitigation ultimately to address the multitude of potential noise impacts of this development.
Thank you very much. Councillor Black, Dawn?
Yeah, thanks very much. I think Greg has just answered my questions really, because my questions were around the change of use from a rural woodland peaceful area into a dog park, which means that potentially you've got maybe 1 or 2 dogs, but with their owners. And as Councillor Carr said earlier, people make noise too. And the assessment that's been done around the noise impact of people calling their dogs, playing with their dogs, etc. And what about if these 4 houses have pets of their own? Dogs coming into that space may react to their dogs. And
Councillor Black, were you commenting or are you going to ask a question? Just conscious we still have to
absolutely. And it's more about the change of use of the land, and what the impact of that. And like I say, I think Gregor answered that already in his comment to Councillor Agnew, so perhaps he doesn't need to respond to me.
Do you wish to make any comment? No, that's okay. I'm seeing no further hands at this point then. Right, very good. All right, so what's going to happen now is we're going to hear from the applicant, Gail White. Can I ask you to come and take a seat at the table? Right, when you're seated and comfortable, okay, you will have 5 minutes, and we'll be keeping track of the amount of time that you're speaking. You'll have 5 minutes to address the committee, and when you have about a minute left, I will, I'm afraid, butt in and let you know that you've got about a minute to go. And we'd ask you to wrap up with that in mind. We have about a minute left. And then we'll have an opportunity to ask you questions as well. Okay, so get started when you're ready.
And I just press talk.
Yes, that's cool.
Firstly, due to technology, there's a new anti-barking device, which is ultrasonic, long-ranging, rechargeable, and invasive. And I've got pictures here so that it actually stops dogs barking that are the barking type of dogs. This woodland dog park is wanted by the community, and because agriculture is in such a poor way at the moment, the government is asking us to diversify. This is why, as part of my agricultural business, I am planning to create a dog park for the community which services the needs. Arable land is being reduced nationwide, and food production is imperative for our food security. Therefore, rather than taking the arable land out of production, I have taken a woodland which was mangled by Storm Arwen, and with good working practices, I have resuscitated and regenerated it in accordance with Policy 14. The slightly higher fence was replaced on the site of the old one, as other landowners in the area have done. For example, on the B9120 from Lornskirk to Fettercairn. This fence has stopped fly tipping and will prevent local deer from destroying any future planting of native trees and wildflowers, improving the biodiversity in the area. It also blends in the rural setting. The planners have objected to the dog park on the opinion about noise. I would categorise the need for a dog park on the same level as a children's play park, such as one in Lornskirk, which is surrounded by houses. This proposed dog park is not a training facility, it is for leisure, relaxing exercise in a safe, natural environment. Dogs do not bark when they're interested, happily taking exercises and investigating. I have done much research on the impact of sound reduction in woodland setting and have found that it is reduced in 3 ways: absorption, reflection, and dispersion by natural barriers. The proposed dog parks and neighbouring properties have sound barriers that consist of trees, walls, fences and hedges, and the wood is undulating topography. It has over 300 trees and ground vegetation. I planted wildflowers and cover crop. The houses are not situated against the boundary fencing as shown on the scaled map. The Environmental Protection Act states that only persistent and excessive barking over an extended period, especially at night, can be classed as a nuisance. The park will not be open in the dark or during antisocial hours. And in 2025, there were over 13 million chipped dogs. There are less legal places to be off the lead, so safe and secure dog parks are essential for dogs and their owners, ensuring physical fitness and mental well-being, fulfilling Policy 23. The dog park will be run as I run the farm, in a caring, professional and responsible manner. The example being dog faeces will become composted with green waste from the farm. There will be a meet and greet in the park and introductory procedures. The park will be closely monitored. Should planning permission not be granted for this business, Hill and Hill may be inundated by unrestricted people exercising their right in this woodland, and as such become similar to other wooded areas locally, whereby people and dog noise, litter and faeces pollution will be unmonitored and uncontrolled. For all these reasons I mentioned above, I would greatly appreciate your support in passing this planning application. If you would like to me to answer any questions, I will. And if you want to see this, I'll pass it round.
Thank you very much for your representation and speaking to the committee. Just ask for input from Mr. Tennis regarding the introduction of additional information at this. Oh, could I ask you, it's right, just to turn your microphone off when you're not speaking. Thank you. Sorry. That's all right. Happens to all of us. Not all of us, we all do it. Yes.
Yeah. I don't think Land Service has seen this information before, have they? Obviously,
No,
yeah.
no, because it's objected to, I've been doing more and more research.
Yeah. But essentially, the introduction of new information this time, we haven't seen it, we haven't vetted it, I have no awareness of what this equipment is, so it doesn't form part of assessing it at that stage of this stage, so it's for members obviously to decide how they accept information, but it isn't something that planning service has considered.
Okay, thank you very much for that clarification. So we have some questions for you tonight. We have Councillor Victor, Catherine.
Yeah, it's just a small question. Have you decided how many dogs at one point you would have? And what hours are you thinking? Is it just in daylight hours, so in the summertime be longer, or?
So what would happen was, people would come online and they would book a slot, either for half an hour or an hour, which in actual fact, by the time they get the dog out the vehicle and back into the vehicle, they might only be using the park for 30 to 40 minutes. And it would be probably non-antisocial hours, wouldn't be in the dark. Usually one person, what's happened since COVID is that a lot of people actually have more than one dog. So we actually had a trial with a lady with 4 dogs with her husband, and it's more about enjoying the area. I'd actually asked the planners to come down on several occasions because you cannot get a feel for things unless you're actually there. But it would be one person or 2 people walking their dogs.
Okay, so there's no restraint on how many people can be booking at one time, though?
There's only one person who can actually book in at one time, and they would get the padlock number so that they would then be able to access the facility. And it's not open. It wouldn't be like 2 different people are coming with their dogs at the same time. One person.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Victor. Councillor Smith, Tracy.
Hi, good morning, Gail. Just a few questions. I think Catherine's sort of asked the same questions I was going to ask about the number of dogs, etc., and opening hours. So there was, I heard you say that you're going to have a meet and greet, but then you've just said to Councillor Victor that you're going to have a padlock number for people. So just, I was wondering, in the meet and greet, it was actually sounded really good for me, that you'd be there to regulate who's getting in and how many dogs, etc. So what is your plan for that? And the other quick question I'll give. Sorry, the other quick question I have you had any complaints in the time that you've been open, and how long have you been open running it as a dog park? Because I think I maybe missed that if it was in the paper. So that was my only 3 questions really. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Smith.
Hi. So we haven't actually been open because of the objection, but what we did do, I know a lady who is a dog groomer, and I asked her if she could get me a broad spectrum of people and dogs to trial it free of charge to see what would happen. And so I met people and it was highly successful. They tend to go in the first gate, and as the lovely councillor over there said, the first thing they do is they go and pee on the first tree. And because they're quite happy off lead, sniffing and things, there is not a problem. We would continue to do that with every new customer meet and greet, and I would actually be giving local employment to someone in the area to help me do this. What was the other question? So,
Have you had any complaints yet on, so I read by the supporting letters that you had, that you had been working it, whether it was friends and family or someone that's brought them in. So it's just, has there been any complaints from the residents yet in the time, and how long have you been trialling it? That was all. Thanks.
right, so we only did a short trial of it because we didn't want any complaints, as you would say, and nobody complained when it was actually being trialled. Nobody came to me and said that they had been upset by the trials. And I know the neighbours really well, and I know for a fact that if they did have a complaint, that they would have actually come to speak to me.
Thank you very much. Councillor Smith, that answers your questions. No.
Yep, it does. Thank you. Thanks.
Councillor Carr, George.
Thanks, Chair, and thanks, Gail. I was just wondering if you could, opening hours, you said daylight hours, would that, so the opening hours might vary depending on time of year. So summertime it might be till late on at night, winter time would used to be, as you say, daylight hours. And the second point, just to clarify, you're talking about probably only 2 owners in the park at any one time, just to clarify those.
Yes, probably two people, but they would actually know one another. They would come together with their own dogs. It's not as if it's two strangers coming together. It might be, I would want to go with my cousin, so that the dogs actually knew one another as well as the owners knew one another. And opening hours, well, in the winter time, it wouldn't be till daylight hours, and you know how such a short day is, so that would be fine. And in the summertime, it would probably be open from about 7:30, 8 o'clock in the morning till maybe 7, 8 o'clock at night.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you. Can I bring Stephen in? We'd like to make a point.
Thank you, Chair. Apologies, if I can just bring committee back, I think a question was asked about how the planning office seen some of the information that's been presented. I think as a point of order, I need to highlight that if the planning officer hasn't seen any new information that's been presented, neither of the neighbours that have been consulted who have not had an opportunity to comment, which should you give a decision against officer recommendations based on that information would be very liable to challenge, which I think I have to make members aware of. It would be normal practice if members feel that, or if an applicant feels that some new information is relevant, that an application is withdrawn and resubmitted. So I think today, if I could advise that realistically, you shouldn't be taking into account information that hasn't already been put in the public domain. Thank you.
That, so turn to Councillor Carney.
Yes, I was just going to ask if you'd.
We can make echo the other way.
No. Mine.
It's Laurie's.
Is it? Sorry. A pleasure. No,
Yeah.
Yes.
No, so being an exercise park, it's not you're not going to have a sort of a training facility, so there wouldn't be whistles and, you know, like a dog training ground. I mean, you see these parks, you know, with the jumps and things for sort of agility, dog agility, and you know, that can be quite noisy, but you're not going to allow, I mean, I think that would probably irritate neighbours if there were whistles and shouting and things.
Your microphone, please, Councillor Carney. Thank you.
It is purely for someone to go in and walk their dog. And I've been speaking to the physiotherapist in Brecon, who's a dog physiotherapist, and she said it's ideal for dogs that have been injured, for low impact, if they've got leg injuries. I've spoken to the vets and they have said that since COVID, there's so many dogs that have not been socialised, a bit like the children from COVID time, and they are actually either frightened, timid, and they need somewhere to just actually be. And also, I'm a woman on my own, and I would quite like to actually have a facility where I could go in, lock the gate, be with my dog, feel safe, rather than going to some random wood or walk my dog off lead. An example is on our loan, we get quite a lot of people who walk their dog off lead. Now, we have got one field right next to the neighbours at Kiln Hill, and this year there's going to be 75 acres of potatoes. Now, 75 acres of weird potatoes, that equates to a 25 tonne per acre. And everyone here is saying about a quiet rural setting. Well, it's not a quiet rural setting when there's approximately 2,000 tonnes of potatoes are going to have to be harvested out of a field that's actually as near as a dog park. So it's when I keep on hearing this, a quiet rural setting, I do know for a fact when I'm down at Kiln Hill, I can actually even hear the trains in the village or the town. And also the houses are very near two other farms. Mr. Medlock, who's got a very, very busy farm, Alec Reid, who's passed away, his grain dryer's continually going. And I looked at my acreage.
You were asked a question about whether or not it was going to be an agility field.
Yes, yeah, it's all about noise though, because Miss Carney said about noise.
We could,
sorry,
avoid personalising to.
Sorry,
that's okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much for your answer. We just, so any further questions, Councillor Carney? No.
No.
We've set back. All right then. So I'll turn to Councillor Sullivan now.
I have two questions for the applicant and I have one question for Gregor, if that's appropriate at this point.
Yes, go ahead.
Okay, for the applicant, you mentioned that dog walkers can access the wooded area even when there's no park or fence there. I was wondering if there's any history of this. And the fence, does it allow the passage of animals such as hedgehogs, or is it like a complete wildlife barrier on the ground level? Thank you. I'll do Gregor afterwards.
It's got a netting, but there's virtually there's no rabbits or anything there now because the birds of prey have consumed them all. But what we're doing is we're really trying to increase the insect life. We've got we've left sticks, etc., so that, and we're planting cover crop for the butterflies, things. What was the other?
Sullivan, can you just remind us of your second question, please?
That was the second question.
About access, history of access. That's
yes.
Right. Sorry.
Well, after Storm Arwen, it was really difficult for access because the trees and everything was so obliterated. But before that, there was definite access because of the amount of fly tipping, etc., and the amount of litter and rubbish that was actually on the property that I had to actually clear up.
Okay, thank you.
Question
for Gregor. Yes, please. Would there be anything to prevent the applicant from modifying her business plan in the future to encompass things like breed meats, puppy meats, etc.?
Yeah, essentially that is the crux of the issue here, is that there'll be no control. And I'm certainly not questioning the applicant's integrity in any way, shape or form. And I believe that the applicant is responsible and intends to run the dog park in a responsible manner. But things can change, and there would be no control. There would be no revisiting the use of the dog park if somebody else was to take over operations of the dog park at a later date and they had a different idea of how it would be utilised. There would be no control that could be managed through a planning condition. It would essentially be a granting a use to be imposed on this area and the neighbouring residents, and whilst there's good intent in terms of the thoughtful management of the facility, there would be no recourse to address that change in the future.
Okay, thank you.
Very much. Councillor Agnew, you have a question?
Yeah, thank you. Yes, we're speaking about the quiet rural area. Well,
Can you use your microphone, please?
the rural areas are not quiet. If you have a cow and a calf being separated, you have yelling all night from them. So I can't see this as a quiet rural area. But what I would ask is, when you had your trial, you know, was there any barking?
What happened was there were a couple of barks as they got out the vehicle. As soon as they got through the gate,
Much sense.
Yeah.
Like I was wanting to go to the car to go to the.
And I do know that in rural settings, there's things that are much noisier than dogs.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Turning to Councillor Burnett. Shirley?
Thank you. Just a couple of questions. Firstly, although your intention is to book one person at a time into this facility, do you have a camera so that you can ensure that whoever books it doesn't take 3 friends and their dogs with them? And my second question is, how do you intend to police that everyone who uses the facility picks up the dog poo? Because it seems to me to be quite rough terrain, so how do you even spot it perhaps in the first place? Thank you.
I haven't put a camera up yet because we're not in business, but if that was something that planning thought was a good idea, that's not a problem. Secondly, we've got bags that we would hang on the gate as you entered, and what colour they are so bright that it would be quite easy to do. But also, and there would be the bin for it. But I've also got an employee and myself who are quite part of our job remit will be going around walking the dog park to check that there is no faeces. And what tends to happen when someone pays for something and they want to come back, they are going to actually behave in a responsible manner.
Thank you very much. Can I bring in Mr. Stephen, who wishes to make a further point?
Apologies, committee, I seem to be coming in on them. I'll try not to reiterate my previous points, but if I can just reiterate what the planning officer said, is that what you're deciding here today is a change of use. And I'll go back to some of Gregor's points about once the use is changed, it's up to the applicant or any forebear of the applicant to do what they like with the land. I am conscious that people are very interested in terms of how things may practically be managed. But we'll ask members to remember that fundamentally you're agreeing a change of use, you're not agreeing the way that a particular business will be run. And that's something what you need to take in mind when you're considering a decision. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'll take my hand down. Oh, that is, that's fine. So I'm seeing no further hands. So thank you very much, Ms. White, for presenting to committee and for answering our questions. If I could ask you to return to your seat. We'll have an opportunity to contribute again. Thank you for your contribution so far. I'd like to carry on if everybody's okay with that. So I'd invite Mr. Bruce to come forward as well now. Bruce is an objector, and again, Mr. Bruce, you'll have 5 minutes. I'll just, if you wait one moment, I'll get myself set up so I can make sure that I'm being fair. And when you're ready, if you'd like to put the microphone on, we look forward to hearing from you. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. My name is Graham Bruce, and I've been a homeowner at Killenhill for over 30 years, and I have put in my objection to the application for the dog park at Killenhill. In my objection letter, I went into great detail of reasons behind it. Most of that reasons have been well addressed previously today. More so on the noise and the disturbance. So I don't see any reason to go into that in more detail at the moment. However, one of the main points that I had within my objection letter was road safety. And it's something that I feel hasn't not been given proper consideration. And the proposed access onto the public road for people leaving is effectively blind with no clear visibility of approaching vehicles from the north heading into Longskirk. And while the vehicle exiting is already well onto the public road. I have provided pictures of photos which I do have today, and I can share again if they haven't been circulated. The first one shows the vehicle where the driver of the exiting vehicle would have no sight whatsoever of an oncoming vehicle from the north. Photo 2 shows the oncoming vehicle at a stage that the oncoming vehicle would find it very difficult to stop should someone exit without due care. And picture 3 eventually shows the clear view of the oncoming vehicle from the north into Longskirk. However, by this time, the exiting vehicle would be about 1.5 metres onto the public road. This is a fast stretch of road where vehicles frequently travel at excessive speeds. Introducing additional vehicle movements on a daily basis would significantly increase the risk of a serious accident. In my mind, this is an entirely unsuitable location for a dog park. Killenhill is a small residential area consisting of just 4 private homes. One which has been there for many years when it was a farm. My own home was developed just over 30 years ago when I bought land from the previous owner, and the other 2 houses have been developed by the present owner. To me, noise and disturbance will be unavoidable. There is no realistic way to control or enforce noise levels. For it to be said that the houses are a distance away from the site, the boundary fence allows the dogs from either side to be within ½ metre of one another. As it's been said previously today, when dogs get out, they do run away, but the first thing that will attract them is the residents' pets. And all the residents do have pets. And on the small trials that the applicant did carry out, there was issues. There was maybe no complaints put towards them, but the dogs, when they were in, did come up to the fence and start barking with the residents' dogs if they were out. I'm not against dog parks in any way whatsoever. I think they are a good thing. And there are other sites available well within the Longskirk area to cater for dog park requirements. There's also land owned by the applicant that would not raise the same serious safety and residential concerns. For the reasons my objection letter given on the road safety, I respectfully ask the committee to support the planning authority's recommendation for referral. I'm happy to take questions.
Thank you very much, Mr. Bruce. If I could ask you to pop your microphone up for the moment. We'll have to do the ping pong with the microphone that we've been doing previously. Thank you. So yes, there are some questions. I have Councillor Carr, George.
Sure. Yes, Graham, it was mentioned that for the applicant that, you know, there's quite a lot of background noise already agricultural in nature. Just wondering if you had any comment in relation to normal agricultural activities that occur in the area, as opposed to what this might introduce, you know, or you know, a different type of noise.
Well, for those of you who don't know me, I've been involved in agriculture all my life and stayed in the country all my life. And yes, there is agricultural noises, but they're not continual. They come and go. For example, given in the potato field, that will be weather allowing, over and done with within a week, 2 weeks. The other noises from neighbouring farms, there's certainly not a lot of noise from cattle, because there's very little cattle within the area these days. But yeah, there is agricultural noises, there is vehicle noises passing, but not the consistent noise that I feel that it would be with dogs within the park and in the close proximity of the 4 resident houses.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Can I ask if there are any further questions from Mr. Bruce? I'm not seeing any further hands. So thank you very much, Mr. Bruce, for presenting to us and for your case. Thank you. So can I ask committee, do you have any further questions for Mr. Spence regarding this application for the deliberations? Councillor Carr, your hand is up. Is that a new hand or?
Question for Gregor. Mr. Bruce raised the issue about the junction and road access, which is not really something we're focused on. Just if you could provide some comment on that.
Thank you. I'm going to come in and confirm, so thanks for the opportunity. So yeah, essentially you will know from the technical report that the access has been set by Roads Development Service, and they are content with the access and parking arrangement. They haven't really any objection to the sight lines that this village place on the private access onto the public road that was raised by the speaker. So essentially the planning service is not raising any concern in that regard.
Thank you very much. And can I ask, Greg, do you have any other comments you wish to make, given points made by both or one or other of the speakers?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I think we've had a good discussion, and the only thing I would highlight, I think the previous comments made in relation to a comparison with a play park for children. And I think the one difference I would perhaps highlight is play parks are generally planned, and when people purchase property or move to a property and there's a play park next door, there's an expectation. I think we also have to keep our minds clear that when we are granting a new use, we are imposing that use on anyone who lives in close proximity or nearby. And that is the crux of the issue here, is that we're not saying it's an unsuitable development for the countryside, we're not saying it's an unsuitable site, we're not saying it would not have many benefits, as were highlighted by the speaker, in terms of women's safety and those with a disability and people who are tenant walking the dogs, etc. But ultimately, we would be imposing a use on the neighbouring residents that they would not be easily expect to have in such an intensified form where you focus on use as a business. And that's what I'd highlight, Chair, just for members to clarify the taking process when we get soon.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm not seeing any further hands at this point. So can I just ask, does everybody feel they have enough information to take a decision today? I want to be clear that the monitoring officer has asked me to remind you that the new information regarding the Noise Act that the applicant commented on, we can't take that into our consideration today. Okay, but we are agreed that we have enough information nevertheless to proceed to it. Okay. So just to remind you that the recommendation before us is, as just stated by Gregory, that we refuse full planning permission for the reasons outlined in the report. Can I open the floor up to deliberation? Councillor Carney.
Can I put a motion forward?
Yes. Yes, do you agree and you'll explain your reasons, yes?
I will do. So I wish to put a motion forward to grant this application. I'll just start by acknowledging the concerns that have been raised, particularly around the noise and the impact on the two properties. However, the neighbouring houses, although they are close, they're not exposed and without protection. There's already a wooden fence and hedging in place, and beyond that, the wider woodland, 2 acres provides additional covering. So they're not sort of theoretical mitigations, they already do exist. And under policy 29 of NPF 4 and policy R2, the Aberdeenshire Local Development Plan is to support small scale business proposals. And the proposal has achieved the mitigations with the opening times, buffer zone and hedging, and also blends into the countryside. I just think it's a really positive proposal that would provide a safe and closed space for dog exercise, promote responsible ownership, support health and well-being, and it's a facility that the community are screaming out for. It's been really well thought out. It's been carefully addressed, and the key considerations. The applicant doesn't seem to have ignored the potential impacts, and they've anticipated them and put forward a scheme to manage and mitigate this from the outset. And that gives me confidence that it's a workable development. So therefore I wish to propose a motion and seek a second.
I'll second that.
Okay, so just a moment. So we are proposing that we grant based on the two policies that you referenced and for the reasons that you've given. And Councillor Agnew, you are coming in second.
Yes.
To add anything to it?
No.
No. Okay. Councillor Carr.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Just at this point, maybe ask Gregor as to whether some sort of temporary planning permission could be given for a period, because I think there is a balance here. I mean, I absolutely see the need for this. I think it's something that would be appreciated in the area for all the reasons that Councillor Carney has articulated. We do have the service that have got concerns about noise, and I would also say it's more people that can sometimes make the noise. I'm not saying that the applicant couldn't maybe make sure that the rest of it is an unknown, and there's a few unknowns here about how this might work out in practice. So therefore, I would be keen to maybe look at some sort of temporary granting so that we could come back on the basis of how this is actually worked out in practice, because we are introducing something new in the area, and for all the reasons it's been articulated, we do have to be cautious about granting plan permission with the objections, and also from the reasons given by Gregor. Thanks, Chair.
So I have Mr. Stephen who would like to come in, and then I'll bring you in afterwards. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Again, it's a reiteration of some of the points that I've made earlier, in that, again, what the committee can't do is just try and find ways to grant this. But on that basis, I would think a temporary planning application wouldn't be appropriate. I'll perhaps ask Gregor to come in to say a little bit more in detail, but I think the straight answer there is I don't, but we would not be able to consider that in this forum.
Gregor?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Yeah, it's a fair point. And it is actually a mechanism that we've used elsewhere for similar facilities, albeit in situations where the separation to the dwelling house is much increased to what we're looking at here, where we have actually negotiated with the applicant temporary consent for perhaps a period of 2 years, and we look at controlling the hours of operation. But that would be in circumstances where we felt that the amenity impact may be acceptable on balance. In this circumstance, the professional opinion from Environmental Health and Planning Services that we don't see that as a viable solution here. We also have to be fair to the applicant in terms of what they apply for, which is a full planning permission. So it's difficult. It's within the members' gift to apply such a permission if they wish. But ultimately, we do have to be careful and take this point on board as well. We've got this application that is in front of us. I can see the merit in temporary consent to some extent. But to another extent, it comes back to the point of that the site can be managed responsibly or it can be managed irresponsibly. It can, aspects can be controlled by the applicant, but if you choose not to, the planning service can have no control over whether you grant this for a temporary period or a permanent period. And that's the crux of the decision making here that members have to consider. I think the preference, if I was to ask my colleagues in environmental health, would be a temporary consent to allow for matters to be reviewed. But ultimately, we do have to act reasonably here. So members can consider that because we've had a bit of precedent for it. But ultimately, I would urge caution at the same time of what actually achieves.
Want to come straight back, or do you want to?
Okay, Chair. Yeah, I would thought something like 6 months might be appropriate, but in view of what Rebecca said, probably just do need to test this to a vote on area committee. So I just move that as part of the recommendations that we can take it there.
So I beg your pardon, you'd be moving.
Apologies, Chair, that wasn't clear. What did Judge say?
You would be moving refusal.
Moving refusal as per of the
Yes.
recommendations to test the view of the area committee.
Yes. Okay. Thank you. So we have a motion to overturn officer recommendation to approve based on, and I'll ask you for the references again in a moment, Councillor Carney, but not yet. And a motion to support officer recommendation to refuse. I had my hand up because I was going to also put an amendment to refuse. I feel personally that this is about the change of use as we've been repeatedly reminded, and that change of use then sits, and you could have a good 4 months, you could have a bad 6 months, you could have something happening over a year period because there's a dog who's using it over a period where there's a lot of disturbance. We can't condition what will happen over the lifetime of that change of use, and the nature of dog barking. I love dogs. I have a dog. You know, she doesn't particularly bark at all. That's not the point, is it? It's not the dogs that we know. It's what we can or cannot absolutely foresee, and we cannot absolutely foresee what would happen here. So I would second the amendment to refuse full planning permission for the reasons outlined in the report. Can I ask if there are any further points that anybody wishes to make, either in support of the motion or in support of the amendment? Councillor Carr, your hand is still up, but I'm assuming that's just a legacy. Okay, so I'm not seeing any further hands. So before we move on, could I just ask you to provide the reference again for your motion? Councillor Carney, it's quite important. I don't know if did you pick it up at the time?
I would just like to get the policy.
Yes.
I think I've got the overall reason.
Okay.
But still, we thought you could tell me if I haven't.
If you for the benefit of the committee and the committee officer, if you could make clear the policy reasons for the refusal. I beg your pardon, for overturning the.
Okay, was policy 29 and policy R2. And also under NPF for policy 14.
Would you like Councillor Carney to speak to those specifically again?
Chip and I got perhaps assist here. So essentially, I think what we have to keep in mind is that there is a recommendation of refusal
Yes.
based on amenity impacts with reference policies there.
Yeah.
So Councillor Carney has highlighted policies that she feels are she's giving increased weight to in terms of decision making, but I do think there has to be some comment in relation to the noise and amenity matters. There was, when Councillor Carney spoke, she did mention aspects of mitigation, such as proximity, existing hedging, and ultimately control of the facility. But I think there has to be some comment in relation to why the more weight is being given and what the mitigation is that addresses the reason for refusal here. I think we have to keep that in mind, and that shouldn't be part of any recommendation.
So you'd like Councillor Carney to expand on this point?
I think probably one way. What's a good time?
So Stephen.
Do we need
Or and John.
do we need to take, well, we can take, if that's all right with the committee, we'll take it's 12 minutes past 11. Why don't we say we'll come back at 11:30? It gives the opportunity for a comfort break.
Yeah.
And I mean, we can be mindful that we're in the middle of a decision here in terms of ongoing compensation. But if Councillor Carney needs to speak to us.